Ever wonder what financial advisors have to say about money goals, the market, or economic issues? If you have, then this podcast is for you. Behind the Designs gives you a sneak peek into the internal conversations at Financial Design Studio. Michelle Smollenberger, a certified financial planner and the CEO here at FDS, will be your host and guide. Welcome to Behind the Designs.
And we're back. I'm with the team again. We're on our next podcast episode, and the holiday season is here. Thanksgiving is next week, and Christmas is just around the corner. And usually at year end, we talk about things like helping others and giving generously, and you will certainly read or hear that from us. But in this podcast episode, we want to cover a topic that can be difficult to navigate to help you as you head into the holidays. So this is one that, we get questions a lot because we're financial advisors. You go home, you see your family, and they just naturally want to ask, maybe financial questions. And that can be in a lot of different areas because money, there's simple cash, what are interest rates? Should I have a money market, or what should I be investing in? So all over the place. And at most holiday gatherings, we all have relatives who, may bring up their opinions or ask you every, maybe awkward question. So finances naturally are one of those subjects. Today, we want to talk about how we deal with those questions. And so we hope this gives you some options for how you may choose to respond if you find yourself a part of a conversation like this. First episode, you were able to meet the team, so the four of us that are partners. And so this episode, we've added Jake to this episode. Jake has been here for just over 30 days. So Jake has made it. He has made it to the podcast. He's doing a great job. I'm saying this like on air. He's doing a really good job. And so we figured this would be fun just to invite him. He's got ideas. He's had questions, I'm sure, as he's been learning about finances. So Jake, why don't you just give us kind of a 1 or 2 minute snapshot how you got into this? You're new here. Maybe, be nice to us. Don't tell anything that you shouldn't. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, just kind of introduce us to you and how you got into financial planning.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Michelle and everyone. And it's an honor to be on the podcast today. Thanks for letting me out of the basement and upstairs to hang out with the adults. No, in all seriousness, thrilled to be part of the Financial Design Studio team. I got into financial planning, recently, I would say, more from a personal finance journey and just loving everything there is to learn about setting yourself, helping others set themselves up for success in the future, and really helping people remove the anxiety around finances and getting that plan from today and to where they want to go. So I decided to, after 15 years in the corporate world, working for a large biopharma company in northern Lake County, decided to do a career pivot into the financial planning world, and I've been working towards my certified financial planner designation for the last 18 months, and we'll be sitting for the big exam in March of 2023. So, really looking forward to that and even contributing more to the team here. So that's kind of my quick story.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's great. And we're obviously excited to have you and to have you contributing. So thank you. This is going to be good. So I think on most podcasts, they say when there's too many voices, it's hard to know who's talking. So we're going to try and do a good job so that you know who's kind of sharing some advice. But we've all been in situations, and we want to be able to just share, what we do when we get questions like this. So I'm just going to kind of open up the table, just whoever wants to jump in. So what thoughts do you have when I say, how do you answer questions when you get a financial question? Or what do you do? What do you talk about?
Don't do it. Just don't do it. This is Rob, by the way. Yeah. So I have always found it very, very hard to do that because money does really funny things to people, and especially within families. And I've kind of viewed it as like talking about politics. Everybody has their own opinions about stuff, and you really want to just pick your battles. Is that something you want to talk about over Thanksgiving or Christmas? The way I've always approached it, if somebody asks me my opinions about something, I'll give it. I'll just give them my unvarnished opinion about whatever they ask. But I would be the last person to pipe up and say, hey, Mom, I think the way you're investing your IRA is terrible. So I would never say that. So, yeah. So I would my approach is don't do it.
I love that. So while we laugh, I mean, that is an option, just not engaging in it and, just trying not, you don't want to be the know-it-all. You will hear in other episodes where what we do and investing takes a lot of humility. And so it's really important that we don't want to come across as the people who know everything. So, what other thoughts?
Well, this is Jake again. And I think, it's an opportunity to connect with people and understand where they're coming from. Specifically, if people are talking about whatever's in the financial media, it's never good, right? They're not gonna put out all the positivity going on in the world, specifically when it comes to markets or interest rates or mortgages or the economy or anything like that, because that's not going to get as many views. So we get that. But I think it's good just to clarify, hey, tell me more about, what are your thoughts about that? And really asking better qualifying questions, especially to family, versus trying to teach them. But I'm with Rob. I'll certainly give opinions if asked, but I really think it's an opportunity to have a discussion around, well, all right, so you're invested in X, Y, or Z, for what reason? And what are your expectations for that? When do you need that money? What are your timelines? And it really comes back to just, if they don't already, getting them thinking about, wow, what is the plan that I have for myself or for my family? And maybe that does need some tuning up or some refreshing, and that's a big part of it is to have that plan, knowing that it's going to change down the road. So I kind of view it as more of an opportunity to have a deeper dialogue if warranted. But don't get me wrong, Rob, I don't want to have that conversation around the Thanksgiving table either. Let's talk about the Lions game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can almost we should identify our holiday conversation personality. So Rob is the avoider, Jake is the engager. We'll see what Trevor and Steve come up with, but no, it's kind of these are options that you have. So, Trevor and Steve, do you want to share, kind of your initial instinct?
Yeah, my initial instincts, this is Steve, is kind of background. I won't engage unless kind of asked directly. And most of the time when I'm asked directly, it's kind of what my relationship is with them. So it's probably more tax related. So there's usually a no-lose situation because everyone hates taxes, no matter how your political affiliations fall or how much or little you make. No one likes taxes. So I get to be an ally with them. How do we reduce your taxes? How do we keep more money in your pocket? So a lot of times it's figuring out if it's deductible. It'll be the question, hey, Steve, I'm thinking of doing, or it's almost year end, should I, and then filling in the blanks. And a lot of times I'll kind of make a joke about it. I'll even reference an old Seinfeld episode where Kramer is asking Jerry is talking about write-offs. And Jerry's like, do you even know what a write-off is? So a lot of times it's just explaining, educating, really just, helping the client, family member, friend understand this is how it's going to impact you. This is what you're able to do. Here's what's legal, all of that. So I don't avoid it, but I definitely don't bring it up unless asked.
I'm going to think of a name for that personality. Okay, it's mixed. All right, Trevor?
Yeah, so this is Trevor. I would say as a part of our team, this is probably pretty much ringing true that I'm most brash personality.
True.
Of our team.
Surprise, surprise.
Of our team, I don't mind conflict. I'm happy to step into conflict. The reason I step into conflict a lot of times is because I always want to get to a better spot, right? And it's not as if I go out seeking it, but I always want to make sure, hey, we're doing the absolute right thing. In that case. So in a lot of cases, when we're having these family conversations of, okay, what about this? What about that? Yada, yada. I rarely hesitate to share my opinion and think through. But I think it is important to make sure that you get their perspective fully understood, right? Because if you go off too quick, which I would I would admit that I have a tendency to do sometimes, if you go off too quick trying to figure out, sharing your opinion without understanding their perspective too soon, or too well, you can basically completely miss the point. And then not only do you not provide one good advice, which stinks in itself, but also you might tarnish the relationship, right? So you want to make sure things are structured well. But if you're a personality that you don't mind conflict, it's okay to step into that and speak directly to it. Just making sure that we're trying to get to the better spot. I think the other thing I want to share too is it also depends on the person you're engaging with, right? There are certain people in my family that hey, maybe they're trying to just bring stuff up, right? Just to cause conflict or whatnot. Maybe that's not a conversation you want to step into versus someone that's really trying to understand, like as Steve suggested. Hey, someone's trying to figure out, should I do this before the end of the year? They're coming to you because they respect your authority, they respect your opinion, and they're really looking at you as a expert in that. So I think the way in which someone brings up stuff is certainly telling with how you can go about that conversation.
Wow, two really good points in these answers. The first is, remembering that the reason someone's asking you is because they consider you as someone who knows and is going to give a thoughtful response for, what they're asking. So I think that's a really good point. While we joke, we don't want to have the conversation. It is really helpful to remember that, actually, to just kind of be like, okay, yeah. No, this is what I do, and we care about people. I mean, that is why we do what we do. We care about them and their finances. And so I think that's a really great point.
Yeah, that's, just in hearing Trevor's answer, we're the polar opposite when it comes to this issue, but the one thing I appreciate about Trevor's answer is when he talks about we want to get to a better spot, what he's really saying is, I want that other person to get to a better spot. And, to be straight, Trevor is more courageous in stepping into that kind of conversation than I am. Sometimes it's hard to see family members or friends make dumb financial decisions. But, like my approach is I don't want to rock the boat. I seek peace before anything. But there's a lot of value in what Trevor does, where he sees something and he's like, that is a problem, and I want to help that person. So, yeah.
Well, and really, I think, what you're highlighting was the second thing I wanted to say was that the relationship, like we care about, and we want to be careful because it's family, and we care about the people that we love, and we want to make sure that there's a relationship, that we're not saying something, we know how we feel when we ask a question about something we don't know, this just happens to be something we know. Everyone else, you do what you do for a living. You do what you do for your job. Well, you're the expert. You're the one that knows what you do. Jake, before you came to Financial Design Studio, you did something completely different. I wouldn't even pretend to know about the field you were in. And so this is where it's realizing that, and that relationship is so important. And so we want to have that communication, that line of communication left open so that, when we're asked questions, and even if we choose not to respond, or we say, what, I could help you, or you try, but you realize that maybe the advice isn't being received well. So maybe you try and you lean into the conversation. It's okay to just say, I don't really know much about that, or I'm not really sure for your situation. And you kind of just like gently try to exit the conversation so that the relationship can be left. And so that you can say like, it's okay. Like, you can choose to do what you want to do. It's your money. It's your decision. And so while we can offer advice or suggestions, like ultimately you get to decide. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. So what are some ways that you guys have seen these conversations go well? Have you seen examples where, maybe in your own life or even with friends or something you've heard that, they actually talked about things, or they always look forward to getting together to the holidays because they're going to learn something? Have you guys seen this go well? Let's be positive here.
The silence is deafening. No, just kidding.
Yeah. Well, and this is where we want, like, this is what we're trying to help. Yeah, is to say, wait, these can go well if you want to have the conversations. I can think back to a client who, when the grandfather passed away, so his whole life, they went on these family trips. It was the grandfather, the parents, the grandkids, and this was an annual thing that they did, this trip. And through just spending time together, so not even necessarily talking about money, through spending time together, the grandfather, paid for these trips for the family to go. He was teaching what was important to him through making this a priority, that the family always goes together and spends time for this week every summer to do this. And then when he passed away, and there were still assets that were being divided between all the family members, even the grandkids, there was actually like a note that was written, like a letter that was written. It would have been by the parents, so not the grandfather who passed away, but the parents, basically saying, really explaining like, hey, Granddad worked really hard for this money, and you could see it over his life that he cared about his family, and there's money left over, and like, this is kind of your portion. We just want you to remember like how he handled money, and not even like, they may not have ever talked about it, but the way he lived his life, they could see, oh, that was important, and now I'm receiving a piece of that. And I think it just makes them thoughtful. So again, we're kind of tying money and family together, but you can see it done well. And I just remember like seeing the note, because I'm doing the paperwork on all the forms, and I was like, that is so cool. So I love when it's done well, and I guess I'm just offering hope and like, reminding you that it can be done really well.
Yeah, as much as I don't like talking finance with family members, one thing my wife and I have done is we have talked a lot with our kids as they've grown up about mistakes that we had made. Even before we got married, I was terrible with money. I got every credit card that at college that they were shoving in my face and all that. Did not manage it very well. So, we've had conversations with our kids growing up that there are certain things like taking on credit card debt or getting over your skis on student loans, things like that you really, really want to be careful of. And thankfully, we have 3 kids that are now grown adults, and they hate credit cards, and what little debt that they've kind of utilized, whether it's student loans or mortgages, they've been very, very open to asking questions about how to best size that so that they don't get over their skis or in trouble or anything like that. So, that's one example where it's, as a parent and, just as a family member, it is really gratifying to see when you're lovingly trying to help somebody and give them advice and they actually take it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's so good. So something Jake joked about in the beginning of being let out of the basement to the adult table. At the holidays, you probably have a kids table and an adult table, so it ties in really well. Rob, you're talking about how now when you want to have the conversation, you've fostered this relationship with your family. You've left the line of communication open so that they're coming to you. So I want to switch it around a little bit, and now let's say you're the one wanting to have the conversation. So there's a few different examples here, and anyone can add and kind of provide some, what you would do or how you've seen this. But I think when we come together for the holidays, we have extended time away from what we're doing every day. We're coming together, out of our environments, maybe a different state, maybe a different town. And we're saying, hey, I don't have to focus on work today. So I can focus on you. Some people purposely say, hey, we're going to be together for the holidays. I really want to let my kids know this. I really want to talk to my parents about this. So let's talk about a few different instances. I'll, give you some ideas and you guys can kind of chime in here. But like parents, when they're wanting to tell things to their adult kids, parents, when they're wanting to explain some things to their young kids, even, or kids to their parents. I guess anything where you guys have said, yeah, there was a time we wanted to say, yeah, we got an estate plan in place. We wanted to take this time when we're all together to be able to do that. Any examples of you guys where you've seen that done well, or other people, or not done well, anything like that?
Yeah, this is Trevor here. The example that I have is, I would say my parents did an exceptional job of sharing with my sister and I and our spouses, once we both got married, kind of the makeup of what their financial situation was like. And, not only that, but the lessons they learned along the way. So a lot of kind of echoing what Rob shared as well. But for us, it was one of those things that we realized that the more open and the more transparent you can be about your finances, the more that there's not ambiguity. So that if something were to happen, you know exactly what mom and dad want. You know exactly where everything is. You know exactly how to handle things because you're open and transparent ahead of time. So that's where, from my experience, I feel like my parents did an absolutely phenomenal job of setting us up well from that perspective. But so that's my experience.
That's great.
One memory that comes to mind is an early client of ours. They had just done a plan with us. They had created their blueprints. We had kind of visualized where all their accounts were. It was coming up to the holidays. It might have been Thanksgiving or Christmas. I don't remember. And they wanted to have a family meeting when all the kids were in town. And after the kids all sat down, and after they learned that mom and dad were not dying, because that's what they thought the meeting was about, was to say that one of them was passing away. After they learned the purpose of the meeting, it was really the mom and dad saying to their adult children, we have everything in place. If anything happens to us, contact these people, meaning you and me at that time. They'll have all the answers. They'll know where everything is. So I think it was ultimately a relief for their kids to know that they don't have to worry about mom and dad. They had everything in place. They had a plan. The accounts were all taken care of should anything happen.
Yeah, and they actually kind of threw a party. I mean, it was literally a party. Like, they had food, and all the kids were there. So it was, yeah.
And they invited us,
and we were there too. They're obviously a friend. It was fun. I think about when one of the first steps when we're working with a new client, we go through this process. We call it a blueprint that we create. And the purpose of this is so that you know the structure of your finances, but there's no dollar amounts on it. And early on, as we've used these, we tell clients, like, this is something you can use, you could give to your kids. They don't have to know how much money you have. They don't have to know everything. Like, you can decide what they know, but it's nice that they know, just like Steve said, that there's a structure in place, that they're thoughtful of it, they're taking care of it. And so these are tools that, as we work with clients, these are some of the reasons why we do what we do, because it gives them a way to be able to share things like this.
Yeah, there's been some really fun instances where clients have printed that, put in a lockbox, maybe emailed it to all the kids. One even asked us to print it poster size, 24 by 36, and he framed it in his office, in his den, so that his family could see it every time they came over. So yeah, there's nothing on there that was revealing, meaning the account values, but it was the structure, the bones of their entire financial life, all on a poster.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I love that, Steve. If my wife's listening, she now knows what she's going to get for Christmas. A wall-sized blueprint.
I think we need a little bit of marriage.
We'll save that for another time. But this is really, really interesting, and I think there's so few people out there that have, and maybe this is a great takeaway for those listening. If you're thinking about what has been said and you don't have all this in place, what a great opportunity to start to put these pieces together. If you need some help, obviously we're here. But just to have full transparency for if ultimately, the worst does happen, that those that you leave behind are taken care of. I think that's awesome. So we turn this from holiday talk to making sure we have all our estate documents in order. I like that. That's a great transition. But one thing that I do, and this is probably the financial nerd in me, is I have nieces and nephews that I don't see that often, but we will around the holidays. And I like to get out my financial calculator and go through some compounding interest examples with them. No, but this is
Uncle
real
fun, huh?
Uncle fun. I am the fun uncle, but maybe not around gift giving, because they know if it's birthday or if it's a Christmas, they're getting $5.29 deposits from Uncle Jake and Aunt Katie. And they look at me. Older ones are starting to be teenagers, so they're like, this is not cool at all, Uncle Jake.
Are you the one that gives out apples at Halloween?
Walnuts and toothbrushes.
You should know Jake does ultra marathon, so that's another
Yes.
podcast.
Yeah, inside the mind of Jake. But no, I think so. That's just something to where I am being a little bit silly, but I think showing young people the power of compounding at an early age. Now they're not employed yet; they're 13, 12, but just to kind of pique their interest in that, whether they have any or not, I'm going to continue to reinforce that. And just the power of having a plan early, starting to save what you can when you get that first, earned income into a Roth. I mean, just what it can do for your future self is so fun and awesome. So,
Jake, you'll be getting a bunch of thank you notes when they're in their college years.
Exactly.
Pulling money out of those 529s for college expenses.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Through the podcast episodes, you're going to hear this, but all of our stories and how we got connected to finance and how we ended up getting where we are, a lot of it, it started in middle school and high school, during a career. And so like, as we talk about these things, we realize the importance of it. That's why we do what we do. And so I just love that we're talking about this and realizing, even for us going into the holidays, just to remember how important, money and finances are, but that ultimately it shapes relationships. It helps us learn about people. We are sharing our stories of who we are and what's important to us just in the way we live, not even just what we say. And so people see how you live, and all of these things are just so important. So yeah, I love how we're talking about these. I can think of a few tips that I hear very commonly. People go away for the holidays, clients will go and, or a family member, and, oh, I heard, so-and-so at work say this. And, even commonly, like really early in my career, I can remember people, saying, oh, this stock, I bought it and it's up like 50%, 100% this year. And I've always thought about that, because then you're kind of like, oh man, I'm not doing a good job. But I always remind myself that people are always excited to tell you the good stories, the good stock choice they made, but they don't tell you about the 10 or 20 others that they lost just as much or more, because it's, not as fun to say those. It's much more fun to say, I picked the right one. And so I think just really, being mindful, having perspective that when people are sharing with you their success stories, that's great. Just remember, and don't ask for, what about your failures? I've never asked that question. But I think that's just something interesting to, think about and just to be mindful of is just, have perspective. Remember that you're hearing the good stuff. So there's a few different options, I think, as we've talked through today. There's different ways that we can handle this. So we can let people say what they want, share what they want, and we can just listen. We can just let them talk, or we can lean in and kind of try to encourage them to, think about it a little deeper. But just because you don't agree with someone doesn't mean you don't always have to give your opinion. Like, it's okay to just let them share, and you don't have to be the right one in the room just because you're the
just be a good listener, right?
Exactly. Like, so much is just listening and just saying, okay. And when they ask your advice, great, now's your opportunity. But it's okay to just let them share their ideas and just listen. And I think a lot of times, like, Trevor, you were alluding to, people come to you and ask questions because they trust your opinion. I think sometimes those things, those times of just listening and just letting someone else talk and not having to be right are what shape people's trust in you, because they know you have opinions and thoughts. And when you don't jump in and chime in to always be right, they realize that, okay, well, maybe I will ask because I really care what Trevor thinks. And then, finally, if you're in the mood for the conversation, which, go to Jake's Thanksgiving because he is ready for the conversation. This is interesting, Jake. We're going to see over the years as you get started here, if you're kind of like, nope, if you change to Rob's answer of don't have the conversation. No, this is really good. So it's funny, we've gone from like the kids table to the adults table. Any, final advice you guys have that you want to give? I think this has really helped to just give perspective. Any final things you guys want to share? Or
like I said initially, there's certain topics. I mean, this year especially, more recent years, just avoid hairy topics as much as possible. Everybody's got an opinion. Opinions are a dime a dozen. My opinion's no better than anybody else's. So, in this holiday season, I'd say whatever the topic is, if it's historically been a tough topic, just smile, take a drink, whatever you need to do, and just kind of move on.
Yeah, that's great advice, Rob. I like that. One thing I would say is just, zoom out a little bit. I think it's easy to get fixated on what's happening right now, but it's important to zoom out, understand what each individual's long-term picture is, what their goals are with their money, and zoom out because, things change and, we have no idea what it's going to look like a year or even 10 years from now.
I'd say my closing advice here is just do an ego check on yourself. You can always say my experience, my exposure, my feelings. No one can argue with that. That's yours, and they can decide to agree with it or disagree.
I think the final option, if all else fails, just take your plate and go sit at the kids' table. You can always, I think that's just important. Sometimes just getting up and moving to a different spot. And I'm not saying like in the middle of a meal, but, just sometimes we have to remove ourselves from a conversation and you'll know. But I think just being thoughtful of everyone else, because ultimately those relationships are really important. And so when these topics collide, we don't want to ruin relationships over them. They're so valuable and important, especially now. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I think this is really preparing us for the holidays, and we're kind of gearing up for these conversations. I think they're actually going to be good. I'm kind of curious to hear what they are, and if we have any, or maybe after this episode, they're not going to talk to us. We'll see. But we hope you got a laugh or two, and then just also some wisdom for the upcoming holidays. We hope this has been helpful. If you think a friend or family member would enjoy this conversation or any of our episodes, we post snippets of all of them to our YouTube channel too. Head on over there and go ahead and subscribe to our podcast to share your favorite moments. So until next time, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you hear in our podcast, please subscribe. We release new episodes every other week. And quick note, the content discussed on this podcast should not be taken as financial advice. Financial Design Studio accepts no responsibility for your individual actions or choices. But for more information about Financial Design Studio and who we are, check out our website, financialdesignstudio.com. We'll see you in the next episode.